Well, hello, my fellow Americans and fellow Christians, and thank you for joining me for one more day of the Word of the Lord here in the United States of America. What I'd like to approach and talk about today is what we are seeing happening throughout the world concerning the birds and the fish. As you know, in Arkansas, 5,000 birds have died and fell from the air and were found on the ground. In Louisiana, another 300 birds. If I must remind you of last year, I believe it was on the West Coast that 100 pelicans were found dead. Also last year, there were 10,000 fish washed up on shore in New Jersey. We also have now, within the last couple of days, the word is coming that there was 2 million fish that were found in Chesapeake Bay dead. That there were 100 tons of fish washed up on shore in Brazil. That there was fish washed up on shore dead in New Zealand. That actually birds were falling out of the air in Sweden. All these things, folks, are happening, and these are signs of the ends of the times. The Lord had mentioned that in the last days there'll be great signs in the sun, the moon, the stars, and the skies. And the Lord had mentioned that in the last days would be as the days of Noah, and the last days would be as the days of Lot. Need I remind you that in the days of Noah, it was great flooding. And the great flooding is happening throughout the world. Just the other day, we began to see the pictures come from Australia where entire cities are underwater, that people are on high ground and they're out of their homes and they're out of their jobs and they're out of money because they're up on high ground and they are flooded out. And they are beginning to say that these floods in Australia are, I quote, biblical proportions. The Lord mentioned that the last days will be as the days of Lot. And the days of Lot, folks, we have seen today throughout the world. We see great social and sexual sin throughout the world, and we see it particularly here in the United States of America. But need I remind you that the Lord had mentioned that the reason why these things were destroyed, why the earth was flooded, was because man had become wicked. That Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed because man had become wicked and intolerable and was filled with unbelief. We see in Jude that he talks about these things, that it is unbelief that brings all the judgments of God upon the world and upon a nation. And folks, we need to remind ourselves that these are warning signs that are happening in this day and age and time. I find it very interesting that in an apocrypha book, that it's not really part of the biblical canon, that what has happened within the last couple days is actually almost word for word in this apocrypha book. Now, it is not of the canon of the Bible, I understand that, and I'll let you judge the words for yourself, but it is very interesting. And I want to jump from one area to another after I speak to you about what I'm about to read. What I'm going to read to you is about what has to do with the birds and the fish. And this is what this apocrypha book says, and it says, the seer speaks of the signs which precede the end. And listen to what he says. An unknown force will wield sovereignty, and birds take general flight. Now, what I really actually believe what he means here is that when birds leave, they go somewhere else. In particular, they are going to take flight. They don't like it where they're at. But I believe what he actually means is that the birds are going to leave the earth, and that the general psychology and ecology of the world system is going to change because of these birds taking flight. And listen to these next words that he says, because it pretty much pinpoints about these fish washing up on shore. And this is what he says, and the sea will hurl up its fish. Folks, I don't think that is any more clear than what we have had happen within the last couple of days. Now, this prophecy begins with one sentence which I think is very, very important for us all to look at. And listen to what he says right at the beginnings. The days will come when the inhabitants of the earth are seized with great panic. Need I remind us of what has really been going on with that within the last 10 years? First, all of a sudden, starting with 9/11 and terrorism, the world was seized with panic because they didn't realize that there was such terrorism in the world, and it began to escalate. It has been quelled quite a bit now, but it was actually escalating throughout the world. But then we have to remember Katrina that hit the United States and destroyed New Orleans in much of that state. It was just unbelievable, the damage that had happened to it. And it is still not rebuilt to this day. It is still devastated in many areas. Need I remind you of the tsunamis that have happened throughout the world and great destruction there. But just recently, within the last couple of years, the last year and a half, the great economic collapse, and the people of the world are beginning to panic. Like, what is going on? Where are the world leaders? Where are the men that are supposed to be guiding us and directing us? And panic is coming on the world because of the monetary system being destroyed throughout the world. There are actually countries that are going bankrupt. They don't know what to do. Now, what is interesting is that towards the end of this prophecy, listen to what he says here, and this has to do with the men and women of this day and age who haven't got the wisdom to handle these problems. Listen to what it says. Then intelligence will hide, and wisdom will withdraw to its chamber where none can find it. Unrighteousness and lust will cloud the earth, and lands will ask each other, has righteousness come your way? And the answer will be no. And in that time all hope will fail, all labor fail. And folks, this is pretty much an escalation of what we are seeing now. People are beginning to wonder, where is the intelligence? Where is the wisdom? Where is the guidance? Where's the great men? Where are the tough-minded men? Where are the moral leaders? Where are the ethical leaders of the world to help us out of this trouble and out of the situation we are beginning to see throughout the world? How are we going to handle this crisis? And he's saying righteousness and wisdom and intelligence is going to just disappear. And the Lord had actually mentioned that in Matthew 24. He had mentioned that in the last days, he says, because wickedness will abound, the love of many will wax cold. They'll depart from the faith. And now listen also to what this prophecy says. And this prophecy also says, and the way of truth will be hidden, and the land will be barren of faith. And is not that what the Lord said? That in the last days, because wickedness will abound, the love of many will wax cold. That there will be betrayal of one another. And we actually see that in the world today. Now it is interesting also because the Lord had mentioned that the last days will be as the days of Lot, as I mentioned before. But listen to what he says here. Now these warning signs of the birds and the fish and the things that are happening and escalating throughout the world, a lot of people are not going to believe it. They're not going to believe that the Lord is allowing these things to happen, that we may awaken and turn unto Him. And listen to what the Lord says here in Luke 21:34. And He says, and take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting, with drunkenness and the cares of this life, so that that day comes upon you unawares. He's talking about His coming. He says, for as a snare it shall come on all them that dwell on the face of the earth. There will be quite a few people who will be deceived. They'll think that these things have always been going on and that they won't see these as warning signs to have faith in God and to turn unto Him, that this land may be healed and their lives may be blessed. Folks, may you turn unto the Lord today if you are not walking uprightly with Him. And may we put our faith in God that we may be a bright and shining light in the end times, that the Lord may bless us greatly. For the Lord has said, any people that turns unto me and repents of their sin, I will heal their land. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.